And if you're all, hopefully just you're all sitting at a table that has an iPad. If you want to move closer, we're a small group. I won't bite, I promise. Everyone's like, no. Did everybody who wanted to get a chance to scan? I know the service is kind of moving a little bit slower. Good, all right. So I'm Stephanie, and I am from the University of Illinois in Chicago. I work in the Department of Disability and Human Development, and we have an assistive technology program up there that I teach courses in and still continue to provide services in augmentative and alternative communication. My background is a speech therapist, and I specialize in assistive technology. And our department is affiliated with the Institute on Disability and Human Development, which is a UCED, or a University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. We also have a grant through the Autism Program, or TAP, and they pay for a portion of my salary. So those are my disclosures and who I am. Thank you for coming. Just real quickly, these are the learning objectives for today. Just to have an understanding of AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication. Just kind of get a show of hands in the room. How many are completely new to AAC? Great. Any experts on AAC in the room? So everyone's kind of in the middle somewhere. All right, that's good. That's what I had in mind as I was putting this together. So hopefully each of you will be able to pull out some tidbits about AAC. The iPads are there to give you an opportunity to take a look at some different robust AAC tools. So we'll have some time to play with them. We'll talk about some different myths about AAC that continue to linger, and I just want to dispel them with some research, and talk about AAC interventions using evidence-based practice, and then talk about one tool that had a really big impact on their family with a case study. So here's our plan. We'll go through different AAC stuff. I'll give you different examples and talk about different tools. We'll talk about those myths, and I'll share the research and what that really tells us. And then we'll look at some assessment and intervention strategies, what you can use in your toolbox and what you can get started with tomorrow, as well as I'll share with you Emily's story. All right, so let's get started with AAC, which is the acronym for augmentative and alternative communication. There are a lot of broad definitions about what AAC is, but I really like Linda Burkhart's definition, which is on the International Society for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. It's a really great website, a great organization, but she talks about AAC as being a set of both tools, so those are things that you can carry around with you, as well as strategies. Things that you're not carrying around with you, but things that can be done in the environment or things that you can do that somebody uses to just solve everyday communication challenges. And she reminds us that effective communication happens when intent and meaning of one individual is understood by the other individual. And that's the purpose of AAC, is to support that communication and successful communication. So what's it look like? Lots of different things. As small as a watch that you can wear on your wrist, a button that can speak a message and get somebody's attention, a robust communication device that you can use with your eyes and make selections using your eyes, an iPad you can tap with your finger, or other selection methods, all kinds of different things make up AAC tools. And again, we'll have a minute to kind of look at those in a bit. But regardless of what the tool is, the focus of AAC is really to be able to say what you want, when you want, how you want, and to who you want. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that the individual who needs a communication tool or a communication strategy can do all of those things that language does for us. They can request something, sure, but also tell stories and jokes and ask questions, initiate a conversation, get somebody's attention, direct the actions of others. I think oftentimes some of these other areas of language kind of go by the wayside, and we only focus on requesting. I want this, I want this. And that's just not how communication is, right? There's so much more to communication in language than just requesting. So it's always a good reminder, we don't want the focus of AAC to be on the specific tool, we want it to be on access to communication. So who benefits from AAC? In the research, sometimes we use the term individuals with complex communication needs, or CCN for short. And really broadly, that's anybody who might experience communication difficulties due to either difficulties with speech and or language development, or there's been a loss in speech and or language skills. So maybe if someone's had a stroke or a brain injury or a different diagnosis later in life that has lost a loss of speech or language. And AAC goes across the lifespan to support people. Everybody from 0 to 110 can benefit from use of AAC if they've got a communication need. So that includes individuals who have developmental disabilities as well as acquired disabilities. So let's get into the fun part and check it out. So each table has an iPad, and they're iPad 10s, so to wake them up, you just tap the screen, or the button is on the top left or right on the short side. And if it has a passcode, it's all zeros, 6 zeros. So open it up, and the 3 that we're going to take a look at today are LAMP Words for Life, Touch Chat with Word Power, and TD Snap. Does anybody have any experience with any of these? You do?
Not really, but I work in it's called Disability Resource Center.
Oh, yeah.
And we run an assistive technology grant, and in order for somebody to get this, they can get the iPad through their speech provider, they write it, but in order to get one of these, like Touch Chat, it has to specifically say in the letter.
Yes.
So I don't actually know what the app looks like.
Yes.
So I have to write it, like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't actually know what the app looks like. So when I explain, oh, here's an iPad and here's this, and your speech therapist will have to work with you to get this installed and processed. They're like, what does the app look like? What do we do with it? I'm like,
This is your day. Now you can explore them and give recommendations. So for the folks who are online, I'm just going to kind of reiterate that you are working for a disability resource center and recommend some of these things, but haven't actually had a chance to see them because the SLP has to put it in their letter. Sure, makes sense. That's how health insurance works. All right, so now we're going to take some time to explore them. And I am going to kind of give you a little bit of a prompt. We're going to start with LAMP Words for Life. And wouldn't you know it, yesterday LAMP changed its icon on me. So it doesn't look like that anymore. But I can come around and show you what it does look like. And I'm going to mirror my screen. So don't worry about these kind of prompts, but so I'm going to mirror my screen so that the folks who aren't with us, who are online, can also see what we're doing. So give me just a second to do that. And then, so LAMP's new picture has like an L that's connected by like a yellow and green dots. Has anybody found it? Yep, you're in the right one. You're in the right one too. You guys are? You guys have found it? Oh, excellent. You found it too? Nope. And then I would flip it the other way. Yeah, there you go. All right, perfect. So LAMP Words for Life is this app here. And the idea behind this one is that there's only one way to get to a word. So you're going to notice when you push the buttons, and feel free to push the buttons, it's okay. Nothing is said until you hit the second button or the third button. So let's say we want to say play. Play is the dice in the center. Nothing happened when you pushed it. So now you have to go and hit it again, and it'll talk. Right? That's so that you can conjugate those verbs. So you could say play, plays, playing, to play, easy play, right? So you can kind of move around and see that. So take a second to look. And I think I said, can you tell me what your favorite color is? Could you see, are you guys okay with yours?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the volume, if you turn them up, they all should speak.
Already.
But are you guys able to find and share what your favorite color is? So I would go to color.
Orange.
And maybe if you wanted to make a sentence, you could say I
like orange.
So you notice that every time you hit something, it snaps back to the beginning of the page. This is to include a motor planning component. So very similar to the idea of playing a piano or an instrument or typing on a keyboard. You're not looking, your fingers are learning where to go. It's a motor plan, right? And not all apps are like that. So there's only one way to get to a word in this one. And the biggest example is orange. So when you think of orange, you might think of eat and then fruit. There's no orange on my page, right? But orange is a fruit. But the word orange can also be a color.
Orange.
But because it's the same word, with two different meanings, and there's only one way to get to a word, it's only in the colors in this program, okay? So that's kind of one nuance of LAMP Words for Life. All right, so now the next one I want to go to, I'm just going to stay in my iPad instead of going out, but it's this touch chat. So for those of you in the room, it's the one that looks like this. And when you open this one, now it's going to be a little bit different. Now the pages aren't going to necessarily snap back. Was everybody in here able to find it? Yeah, good?
Yes, sorry.
Good? Yeah. Found it? Awesome. Okay, so play around with this one now.
Stop.
Right, so before we were saying our favorite color, and we were saying I like the color, so maybe we could do I. Did you see how now the page changed to all my verbs of what would come after that?
Like.
And now it went back,
Orange.
and it's staying here. So it's a little bit different. And orange, you'll notice, is in colors, but if I go back home and I go to my groups, and then I go to my food and my fruit, orange is also in fruit.
Orange.
So there's multiple ways now to get to it. Some kids like one thing, some adults like one thing, some kids and adults like the other. It's kind of, up to the person who's using it, which way they want to go. But this is a little bit different with this system. Now, what would happen if you wanted to answer the question, hi, how are you today? Can you find how you might do that? Just as a practice to look around. We could say good.
Good.
If that is in fact true. Or we could go into social, and we could say I'm fine.
Fine.
Or we could say I don't know. All right, the next one I want to show you then is something called TD Snap, which is the apple, for those of you who are in the room. And the apple one, everybody get there? Good, okay. The apple one is also based on principles of motor planning, but it's got less buttons. So the first one, we had 84 buttons in that lamp. This one has choices of 30 buttons, I think 40 buttons, and 60 buttons. So right now you're looking at the 60 button one. But similarly, it's going to always take you back to the home page. So if we wanted to say I
Like.
and then we'd have to guess where our colors are. They're a descriptor.
orange.
But see how it snapped back? And with that one in the middle, we stayed on the page so you could look for some more things.
I like orange.
So maybe for this one, you could figure out what it is that you would like to have for lunch. Can you answer that question if I asked you what?
Do you want?
What do you want for lunch? Uh-huh. I heard somebody say meat, and I heard pizza.
Want. To.
Noodles sounds good, too. So I'm just going to kind of look in here.
Eat.
For those who are online, whoops, I missed it.
Sandwich.
Okay, so does that kind of make sense about the motor planning principle, that some are these one single route, if you will, to get to a word, versus it's kind of carrying you and flowing you along to make the sentence, to help you go. While we're in here, feel free to play around with them and check them out. It won't bother me if I hear the voice as we kind of go along, but you're welcome to see them. All right. So kind of a little bit of what AAC is. You got some idea of what a robust system is. Robust means there's just kind of endless words in there that you can put in and for somebody to use, which is a little bit different from something that's not electronic, because you just have either the book or the page, and what you see is what you get, right? So let's talk a little bit now about some myths, as well as they relate to early intervention, but I think they can kind of go across the lifespan anyway. But something that I will commonly hear from both family members and professionals, that there is this thought that if you introduce AAC, it's going to hinder or stop speech development. Now, while AAC's goal is communication, and remember Linda's definition of communication is that intent and meaning is understood by the other person, doesn't matter the modality. So AAC's purpose is not to improve speech. There's no research to show that it stops or hinders speech development. So in fact, there is some literature to show that there are improvements in speech skills with AAC intervention. I think there's a lot of different hypotheses about that. It offers the individual a lot of opportunities to hear words and repeat words. So, instead of maybe a 30 or 40-minute speech therapy session once or twice a week, where you're trying to work on these words, now you're constantly hearing these words, and in your own time, you can listen and repeat them. It also gives you kind of the means to be the person who initiates communication, so you're no longer just passive and waiting for somebody to ask you a question so that you can answer it. You're able to initiate a question, you're able to initiate a request, you're able to initiate labeling something, and that can be kind of an impetus maybe to kind of spark that speech. Definitely growth in language skills. So speech being the words coming out and your mouth being able to articulate those words, language just being able to comprehend language as well as know the words that you want to say and put them together. So children ages 0 to 6 show improvements in all of this stuff, expressing and understanding language. They're using behaviors that are more communicative, so that might mean like nodding yes or no, or kind of giving a thumbs up, or something that's a behavior but it's a communicative behavior. And that there's just a huge growth in their ability to interact and participate, which makes sense if your communication skills are getting better, right? Another myth that I hear often is that children need to have a certain set of skills to benefit from AAC. This thing like that there's prerequisites that you have to meet. And that just couldn't be farther from the truth, because all of you now have had a minute to try AAC, and you are all adults who have language skills mapped onto your brain. You can read the words on the buttons. You don't have to decipher what the symbol looks like. You know that orange is a color and a fruit. And those are all skills that really no 2, 3, 4-year-old, 5-year-old has, right? So there can't be these prerequisites to be able to use AAC. It's something that you have to learn. So really, and have the opportunity to learn. So really, researchers are finding that children should not be excluded from AAC due to intellectual performance or any prerequisite sensory motor or receptive language skills. But instead, we understand that there's the potential to learn this given the opportunity and right interventions to teach it. And actually, when you combine AAC with naturalistic developmental behavioral interventions, or NDBIs for short, this really leads to better language outcomes for children on the autism spectrum. So it's actually going to support cognition and language development instead of you have to demonstrate that you have those things before you get this tool. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm driving that one in because I hear it so often. Oh, they don't have the receptive language skills to be able to use AAC. They're not a candidate. Nobody is a candidate. If you have, there are no prereqs. If you have a communication need, AAC is probably warranted. And this kind of goes along with that, but speech-generating devices are only for children with intact cognition. Again, couldn't be anything further from the truth. How do we know what somebody knows if they don't have a way to express it to us, to show us, right? So, and I'll remind you again of what Linda had mentioned in her definition of AAC, that AAC supports both expressive language, so being able to get your message out, but also receptive language needs, so comprehension. So if somebody is having receptive language difficulties or auditory processing difficulties, it's going to be really hard when someone is talking at you using speech and auditorily you can't process it, or you have a language need that you can't really understand it. When you add the visual and someone communicates with you using an AAC visual device, it can really support your comprehension. So, and the other thing to note here is that technology has just grown exponentially with AAC. There are many different features in a device to meet the needs of anybody where they're at, whether that be using visual supports to expand the button when you push it, or auditory supports. There are a lot of different features that can be included in an AAC tool to meet somebody where they're at intellectually. And again, AAC can offer just a better way to understand what the child knows and what they don't know, which we'll see in a minute in our case study. Children have to be a certain age to benefit from AAC. This was really kind of my big reason for doing this talk and titling it Tech for Early Talkers. Oftentimes I will see an early intervention, not the introduction of an electronic communication system or an AAC device, and waiting until the child gets into early childhood or into school. And then they're transitioning into school and then need to be evaluated for the device. And time that is precious for language development is just ticking away. And there is no, minimum age requirement to use AAC. And so the earlier the better with all things that you want to teach a child. So there's no evidence to support this claim, even though it is a common practice that I still continue to see when I'm working with different providers and families. So again, we just really want to capitalize on early learning and development and prevent some aversive behaviors and frustrations that can manifest when you don't have a way to express yourself. And then this last point is just making language accessible from the start. So for not everybody, speech is accessible, or verbal, listening to somebody verbally is accessible. So we want to make sure that we're providing accessible language to somebody from the beginning. All right, so we talked about AAC, had a little bit of practice with it. We talked about some really, really common myths that still are around and what the research is telling us. I want to just go in a little bit on what assessment looks like and then share with you Emily's story before we wrap up. So a lot of what I do at UIC is provide AAC assessments across the lifespan. And all of these things are pertinent to the 0 to 100 age group. This is not just for early intervention. But when we do an AAC assessment, it's very different from a typical assessment that might be more like a standardized or normed assessment. We do a dynamic assessment. And what we're looking for are those features that I was talking about in a system that match the individual's needs, right? So if they don't like when the page snaps back to the home page, but would rather it stay, like we saw in that middle app, okay, that's a feature then. We're only looking for systems that do that. If they like a screen, if they need a screen that's much bigger because of their vision needs, there's a feature we're looking for. And this little iPad isn't going to cut it. It's going to be too small. So when we're doing this dynamic assessment, we're looking at how is this individual going to physically access the device. For many, they can use their fingers and push the buttons, but for many, they can't. So we want to figure out alternative ways to access. How will they transport it? Is this a 2-year-old? I'm not going to give them a 15-pound computer. They're going to need something that's really light that they can carry around. If they have any sensory needs, hearing, vision, tactile needs, what language supports are built in that might be helpful, what cognitive supports, and what operational and support features are there. And we do our assessment through play-based activities with the younger crowd, through observation of how they communicate, and through interview, asking families, asking parents, asking teachers in the classroom, anybody who's working with the child, just gathering as much information about the child as possible. Because when I first meet them, I get a snapshot of my 2 hours with them, and everybody else obviously knows them much better. So those are the 3 things that we use to figure out all those different aspects of what features are needed in a device. So just to highlight a few things, when we think about physical and sensory supports and direct selection via touch, sometimes I will see kids who have difficulty with getting those little tiny buttons get 4 big buttons on their device. And that's one thing what I mean is don't compromise language. So from my standpoint, I have way more words that I say than 4 words, right? From a physical access standpoint, that might be tricky for the child to isolate their finger and do all those buttons. So how can we figure that out? Still have access to all the words so that they can do that colorful language, right? Tell jokes, ask questions, make requests, all of those things, but also be able to physically access. So there are some things, especially for kind of that early intervention group. One is the use of a key guard, which is something like this. So these are the grid of the buttons that you had seen, and you put it on top of the screen, and now it makes like a little box that you have to get your finger in. And that works wonders for the 0 to 5 crowd because it helps them target their finger just enough and give them the tactile kind of feedback, like when it's really hard to type on an iPad when you're not looking, but you can type on a computer keyboard when you're not looking, right? Because you can feel the buttons. This lets you feel the buttons and see that there's a square there, right? So that can be a really simple way to support physical access. There's also a variety of other ways you can access things. It's beyond the scope of this talk today. But the biggest take home is we don't want to compromise access to language. If they need, which they certainly do to have colorful language, thousands of words, we can't just have 4 boxes on a page. So we have to find another way for them to access. A small, kind of lightweight, portable system for if we're talking about those little ones who are walking around, there are definitely systems that are 2 to 3 pounds. They come in iPad mini size, or they come in iPad like a phone size that can be carried around pending that their vision doesn't need something bigger. We think about a carrying strap and how they're going to walk around with this thing, maybe a handle and a durable case, right? For this group, we want to make sure that there's a durable case. All right. Oh, this was my, I'm sorry it's not showing up so nice, but this was my example here. If I had given, of having robust communication, if I had given you this picture and said, all right, in your mind, come up with 3 words to describe this picture. And let's pretend you don't have an iPad with all the words and you're just given this. Are your 3 words on there? Anybody got 1 word on there?
Ready. Bad.
You could use bad, but was that the word? Whoops. I want to go back. Was that the word you were thinking of for that picture? Okay, it's bad. Scary. I would say scary, crazy, old. Mm-hmm. So when you just limit somebody to 15, 20 words, you kind of shrink down what they're able to talk about. So don't compromise language is that take-home point. And then this is the picture of the key guard. So that's just what it looks like on top of the iPad, but this is one in the flesh, in real life. All right, so language supports. I'm just going to kind of bring this home again, but our goal is for the person who's using AAC to be a competent communicator. And what does it mean to be a competent communicator? You've got knowledge of language and of language and skills in using language to effectively convey opinions, thoughts, feelings to a variety of audiences on a variety of topics in a variety of settings. So if you only have that one paper that has 20 words on it, that's not really going to support your competence in communication. And the other thing is having communicative autonomy. So that's being able to say what you want, when you want, to whom you want, and how you want. And because of that, we need access to all those words, which we would call a robust communication system. So one thing to support in the 0 to 3 age group and the little ones is that motor planning component that we saw on LAMP and that example of orange, where you can only get to it in one way. It can be frustrating for those of us who have language mapped onto our brains, who are able to read. It can be kind of tricky to use LAMP. Or to use a motor planning component, because we like that I could say, I want to eat an orange and it goes to that place, or my favorite color is orange and it goes to that page. But for this crowd, that especially folks who are on the spectrum, who like things to be kind of in a very patterned way, and it's the same all of the time, that flexibility in the middle app that I showed you can be frustrating. And this predictability in the motor planning component can be really supportive. Plus, when you're talking about really little ones, the knowledge of orange being a fruit and in the fruits category, and orange being a color and in the colors category, that's all learned from like life experience and school. So when you're 3, you might find orange under grandma because grandma always gives you oranges. She always has oranges at her house. It's not necessarily grouped with the fruits and the colors. So this kind of takes that categorical knowledge away and just like learning on a keyboard, you just learn the patterns of where the words are. So it can be really helpful for the younger age group. So this is just that example of orange being it's a color, and so you see it in the colors, and we practice this. And it's also a fruit, but when you go to fruits, there's no orange in there, because there's only one way to say it. So kind of less ambiguity and a more pattern kind of spelled out. You know what you're going to get. Another thing that I find really supportive for the younger kiddos is something called a vocabulary builder or a vocabulary filter. And so maybe in therapy you're working on the words go, play, stop, more, all done. And you really want to teach the child that motor plan to get there, those specific words. So what you can do is turn on something called a filter, and you can filter out all the other words. So you only show those 5 or 6 words that you're working on for that 30-minute session. And then when you're done, you turn the filter off and the child can still continue to explore, but now they know the motor plans for these specific words that we were targeting. Certainly, they should have access to all of the words when you're not specifically working on something so that they can explore and kind of self-discover. So just some big takeaway tips, especially in early intervention, starting the discussion early about access to AAC and how AAC can improve both speech and language skills, comprehension, support with transitions from EI to early childhood or any other time period in life, is really important, as well as knowing about different funding sources. So in Illinois, early intervention is available to pay for different devices for folks, pending they're young enough to be in early intervention. The caveat with that is you have to put in your request 6 months before the child is going to age out of early intervention. So if you're 3 at 36 months, you have to put the request in by 30 months, or EI cannot fund it. So if you're past that, or there's other things going on, health insurance does also pay for these devices under durable medical equipment. So private health plans, Illinois Medicaid plans, straight Illinois Medicaid. For those who work with older adults, Medicare does cover them too, but usually our little ones aren't on Medicare. And then I would just encourage anybody who's interested in AAC and working with kids who have complex communication needs to continue to explore just different training opportunities and mentorship. That International Society for AAC that I mentioned earlier with our definition of AAC is a great resource and offers a lot of different free trainings. So are the different vendors that are around. There are definitely free access to apps. So the apps that I showed you, that TD Snap, you can have a free professional account if you are somebody who is a therapist or a teacher. The Touch Chat app, there's a 30-day free one that you can have access to that will talk. After that, it doesn't talk, but you can still kind of see the words. And the LAMP Words for Life, if you go to a LAMP Words for Life training, you get a free license for the app. So that's great. And there are months throughout the year. So I know it's at the end of the month, but April being Autism Acceptance Month and Awareness Month, the apps are usually 50% off. Another good month is October, which is AAC Awareness Month. They're usually 50% off. And sometimes in May, which is Speech and Hearing Awareness Month, they're 50% off. But definitely look in April and May because they're pricey, so 50% off can make them much more affordable. But for those of you who are interested in AAC and work with kids who need AAC, I would just encourage you to just dive in and start.
Question, can you repeat that first example that you said with that definition? What was that, the AAC something?
Oh, the International Society for AAC? Yeah, and it's ISAAC for short, ISAAC, International Society for AAC. So what does intervention look like? Again, that could be a whole nother presentation, so too much for the scope of what we're doing today. But when we find the tool that we're gonna start to teach, now we're looking at the intervention, right? And the number one, top, biggest, best way to teach somebody how to use AAC is to speak AAC. So I will just put this kind of analogy out there. It is very similar to learning a second language. It's very hard to learn a second language when you're sitting, reading a book of the second language, and someone is quizzing you. Okay, tell me the Spanish word for chair. Tell me the Spanish word for tree. Tell me the Spanish word for lake. That's hard, and people don't learn that very well. But if you go and spend a week or two in Mexico and are surrounded by folks who are speaking Spanish, you pick it up much more than you would in that first example. And it's very similar to AAC. So you need to model communication with AAC at the person's level. So if the individual is somebody who isn't using any words at all with their device, our first step would be one-word utterances, right? We're not going to go from not using words to making 7-word sentences. So we're going to follow kind of the typical language development pattern. We go from one words to combining 2 words and then making words longer or sentences longer and then changing around like conjugating verbs and adding past tense and present tense and that kind of thing. And so we're going to model kind of where they're at and one step ahead. And that's what aided language input is. The device is aided language, and you're providing input and exposure. So if I'm going to ask my student, what color do you want? I might model on the device color, because I don't want to say, what color do you want? That sentence is way too long for them, but I'm modeling color, and then going to some different choices. Here's all my colors that maybe you could select. Or we're playing with cars, and I want to know if the car should go fast or slow, and I just model those words. I'm not modeling that whole sentence. Should the car go fast or slow? So just kind of 1 or 2 words, right? And we do this during reading, where we're reading together, obviously during play, different sensory activities. Oh, it feels icky, it feels good, it's mushy, it's soft. The other way to really teach AAC is to accept multiple methods of communication. So if I said what color, and I opened up my array of colors, and my student points to something in the room that's pink, I will honor pink. I'm not going to force you to say pink on the device, right? Because that can become frustrating, and that's not really what we do in any other situation of how somebody's communicating, right? If somebody said, do you want pink? And I nodded my head yes, they wouldn't say, okay, now say yes. Okay, that just doesn't happen. So you want to honor all modalities and affirm and accept them. And maybe you say, oh, great, pink on the device, to kind of teach that you could also tell me on the device. You don't have to, but you could also. So that's all. We don't want to test or force anything, right? Because then communication in this tool isn't fun and powerful, it's a job. And that's the last thing we want to do. Because when it becomes a job and it's something you have to show that you can use or practice, then it's not fun. It's just something you want to kind of throw away. So you want to do things that are fun and that show the power of communication and your voice. And obviously modeling a bunch of different language functions. I think that this image on the screen with the little baby looking at it is a good reminder that when kids are learning to communicate using spoken language, by the time they're 18 months, between their parents or siblings or other caregivers in their life, they've heard about 4,380 hours of speech. So that's like, you're learning Spanish and you've been exposed to Spanish from fluent Spanish speakers for 4,000 plus hours. And that's when we expect them to make their first words, right? And to make their first word combinations. We're waiting for them to hear all of that stuff before we expect anything out. Now that would take 84 years for somebody to be exposed to that who's learning AAC and who's getting kind of a typical speech schedule, once or twice a week for an hour to 45 minutes. So just being mindful about that. The more that you're exposing them to that stuff, the more that you're teaching AAC. All right, so in these last couple of minutes here, I just want to wrap up with this story about Emily. She was a great client that we just worked with, and we did a little case study with her. So Emily is currently 3 years and 3 months of age. She loves the Count on Sesame Street, and that will be important because that was one of her first words on her device. And she loves and is loved by her parents, her mom and dad, her grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, and friends. She doesn't have any siblings, so it's the 3 of them living in their home. She is on the autism spectrum. She was diagnosed around 20 months and has severe childhood apraxia of speech. So she is unable to produce sounds or any words. She has no words verbally, but even just sounds are really hard for her to make. So with her story, her mom and dad noticed at about 16, 17 months that she was having some speech and language delays and hypotonia, so she had low tone in her muscles, which was impacting her walking and her fine motor skills. And so she started early intervention at 18 months. Which included traditional speech language interventions. Those things include, family education and this introduction to a total communication approach. So that's using manual signed English, so not American Sign Language, but you're just pairing some signs like more when you speak. Working on trying to encourage her to have some vocalizations through different vocal play, like use of an echo mic or a microphone to make fun sounds with your voice, blowing bubbles, those kinds of things. She did have non-electronic communication boards in her house, which were photographs of food that she really liked, so that the family was noticing that she really wanted something to eat. She couldn't express what it was, and having photos of the things that she liked, she was learning to go and point to them so that she could share what it is she was asking for. Around 24 months, the speech therapist on her early intervention team and the coordinator for EI services had made the suggestion that Emily might benefit from an assessment for a communication device. So something like what we were looking at earlier. And Emily's mom, Michelle, who is co-presenting with me later this afternoon about her story, really, really wanted me to emphasize, and she thought and it is important, it's very important, that this was a 6-month wait where we live up north in the Chicagoland area. And there are, not an abundance, but there are a lot of providers and opportunities up in the Chicagoland area, a lot of different clinics, and it's still a 6-month wait. So where there's not as many providers and outpatient services and whatnot, it would be even longer. And she was like heartbroken by this, because 6 months when you're 2 to 2.5 are critical developmental periods. I mean, think about what a 2-year-old to a 2.5-year-old can do in those, and learns to do in those 6 months. And so she just felt like this wait was awful and the time was ticking away, and was wishing that there were more service providers available who would be able to do this assessment. The other thing, if you remember, early intervention, you have to request 6 months before they're going to age out. Well, if you're 24 months and the wait is 6 months, and you're kind of on a clock here, right? That wasn't going to work out well for them. So we kind of met each other through happenstance. She landed on coming through the assistive technology unit at UIC. So I met Emily when she was 2 years and 10 months of age. So not enough time to get early intervention for funding. So our evaluation just was me going over to her house, observing her playing with her, and kind of introducing some of these tools. And when I introduced them and talked on them and said, let's watch TV, or let's play with blocks, or play blocks, Just what would she do? Did she stop to focus on it? Did she keep playing? Did she try to attempt to touch it? No test, right? She has not been exposed to this at all. I am a brand new person to her, so we just want to play and make things fun. Like I said, there's no pass-fail. You're getting an AAC tool. I just got to figure out with your mom and you which one is the best one for you. And then, of course, an interview with her mom and dad while we were playing. And so we collected some baseline data, which we used something called the FIATS, which is the Family Impact on Assistive Technology Scale, and this scale is specifically for AAC. There are ones for other assistive technology, but we use the AAC one. And language sampling. So language sampling is just taking note of all the things that she's saying and seeing if there becomes like a pattern, if it starts to grow, if it becomes more consistent. So doing all of that, we landed on this TD Snap app, which you guys had kind of tested out. And I can just play with you what it kind of looked like, because it doesn't look like she knows what she's doing. Well, kind of. But you can also see that she likes this, the count, which is in this device, is vampire. So here's Emily.
From on let
Where's
of
the
stop,
count, Emily?
right.
Where's the count?
She's just playing.
from vampire
So she was playing, figuring out the words, right? And then her mom asked her the question about the count, which
zapu he who
now she's
who,
just back to playing, babbling, just figuring it out.
from on
Whoops. So why we liked this one? Well, Emily was drawn to it because it really was the only one that had the word vampire in it. And like I said, she's a huge fan of the count. So that was a win for her. She was like, yep, I'll play with this one. And I think that drives home the importance of, in this little age group, sometimes there's a focus on core vocabulary, words like go, stop, me or my. Those are very important words, but they're boring words also. These little guys like this kind of vocabulary where they can really show their interests, and their interests are reflected in their vocabulary of what they can talk about it. Mom really liked this app because she got super excited about Emily's excitement and joy in using the tool. We looked at some of those operational features, which includes personalizing it and adding in your own pictures and your own vocabulary. And this one was fairly easy for Emily to be able to, or for mom to be able to do, so she liked that. It was portable. She liked that she could carry around the device, and that the organization of the language was fairly intuitive for her. I liked that it had that motor planning aspect. So remember I said it might be harder for us who have language mapped on, but it's really good for these little ones who just know this is my path to get to that word, and I only have to remember this one path. It's definitely a robust vocabulary. It's going to meet her where she's at now and grow with her for a long time. And there's that vocabulary filter, that ability to kind of filter out all the extraneous words and only focus on a handful during like a therapy session or something like that. So again, when we started, a lot of just pushing buttons. In this video, you notice it starts out upside down, which is okay. But I want you to think of this as like babbling, right? So babies and toddlers are playing with sounds, and their sounds start to sound like maybe something, and then mom or a caregiver or a dad or somebody is going to start to repeat it and assign meaning, and the child will keep doing that sound and eventually shape it into a word, right? We've all seen like maybe a 9-month-old go, huh, and we're going, I don't think they said mom, but the family's like, no, that's mom, and you get excited about it. It's the same thing with AAC. You're babbling, and then something catches and seems meaningful in the situation, and everybody around you starts to assign meaning to it, and you learn now, oh, when I did that, everybody got excited. I'm learning now what this means. And then, of course, that vocabulary filter that I had mentioned. So we can see Emily kind of playing around again, and her mom's going to assign meaning in a minute. At least I think that's that video.
Elmo potato he potato why others left Emily DFFFXXC feels they tried to, what,
What?
See?
What?
So babble, 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 and then she's got this one word, and her mom's paying
How
attention
many?
now.
one,
All right. So this is just what the vocabulary filter can look like when there's more buttons on there. And this was a feature that we really liked. That funnel that's in the top corner that's green, all you got to do is tap it to turn it on and tap it to turn it off. And then all the words will show back up when you turn it off. This is the fiats, that baseline kind of measure that we took. So if you, it's free. Anybody can have access to it if you want to use it. I think it's a great way to show data on progress and use with the system. Sometimes all that babbling is hard to make sense of, is this something that's really supporting them? But the family impact scale can be really helpful. But it's a quick 38-item scale, and parents or any other caregiver is asked to state how much they agree or disagree with a statement, and again, the purpose is to observe the impact of AAC in 7 different dimensions. So those dimensions are behavior, education, face-to-face communication, self-reliance, social versatility, security, and supervision. So the items just look like this. You have to agree or disagree. My child needs help from others when communicating. Strongly agree to 1, strongly disagree. Here are a couple of more examples. Just a few more. So we tried to get this device called the TD Navio, and that has the communication app that we were looking at with the Apple. And Emily was going to try it for 30 days in her home. And during those 30 days, I provided training on that aided language input, that modeling that we were talking about, good AAC habits so that you bring your AAC device and have it with you wherever you go and make sure that it's available. And don't make it work, so that, make it fun when you're using it. And our data collection was the language sample. So what was she saying with the device? So here's kind of how it went. Lots of continued exploration, answering questions, labeling things, requesting, commenting, but it's starting to shape itself. So kind of in the middle of the trial, I got an email from Mom that said, oh my goodness, this morning Emily found the I love you button, and that was great. For the first time she was talking about I love you. And here's some other ways that she was using it.
Do you remember?
So now she's using it just to label. She's playing with some magnets.
whale,
Good job. That's a whale.
Yeah. And then over here. She's watching Miss Rachel on TV, and they're talking about shapes. And I think she mentioned that it's a rectangle. So Emily found the rectangle and was just commenting about what she was watching.
Do you
This was our data sample sheet that I gave them. So on what date, who was she talking to, and what did she say? So Mom wrote out all kinds of different things that she was saying. The middle column, the baseline, was the beginning before they had access to the AAC device, and then afterwards was after the trial. Some big things like my child is learning to communicate independently. In the beginning, that was a strongly disagree. That changed to strongly agree after just a couple of months. So not that she is an independent communicator, but that she's learning to independently communicate. So a lot of nice positive change. You can see that in minimal detectable change, so like is it statistically significant between the baseline and the post, are yeses, changes in behavior, changes in education, changes in face-to-face communication, in security, and self-reliance, and social versatility. Not so much in supervision, but that makes sense. She's still 3. She still needs to be supervised. She's not, going off to the grocery store on her own yet. She, from that time, transitioned from early intervention to early childhood, so she's now going to school. She started school in February. And her mom has said so many times that she thinks it's made the transition much smoother because she's had a way to express herself and participate and show her teachers what she knows. So this note from the SLP just says, wow, beautiful job interacting in language group today, navigating her AAC device, totally in sync with the lesson. And she had exposure to it, so it wasn't something new she had to learn in addition to this transition. Her mom said that the frustration is down and those difficult behaviors has just been minimized because she's got a way to tell me what it is that she wants or is looking for.
Does Pete worry?
So this is them while they're reading a
Goodness,
book.
no. He sits down with his friends and sings his song. Eating in my school shoes, eating in my school shoes, eating in my school shoes. Pete and his friends are playing outside in a green grassy field with swings and tall slides. Where is Pete?
So just a good opportunity to kind of introduce new vocabulary. So mom asked, where's Pete?
Playground.
And she said he's at the playground, which
Kids are
sounded
running
correct.
at every does.
The other thing, and remember, AAC is not meant to increase your speech, but there's increased vocalizations from Emily now. So she's not using words yet, but she is using, at least not on her, through her voice. But you can hear that she, in this video, you'll hear her say duh when she's going to answer a question that the answer is duck.
Cat.
So the video she's watching is talking about a cat, and then they're going to say, which animal says quack, quack? And she's going to look for duck and say, see if I can get it louder. Sorry, it's not the best volume.
Duck.
You can kind of hear it, but she says duh and then hits duck, which was not coming out before. And then finally, her mom just wanted to reiterate that she's able to show and tell us all of the things that she knows. So in this video, they're talking about math. I think the question is like, what's 3 minus 1?
2.
And she's answering it, right? So now her school is knowing all the good things that she knows. All right, so we went through and talked about AAC. You kind of got a chance to check it out, talked about some different myths and some different assessment and intervention strategies. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to come up and chat. I'm happy to share with you. I have some non-electronic boards if you want to take them home. This is my contact information. I also have my card. Or if you need a copy of the handouts, feel free. So thank you all. Yeah.
So, and we have checkout forms back here, but if you need help checking out, I can scan you as well. The checkouts are on the table.
Are you able to make them smaller? You know, not so many words across.
Is a person have like what vision need, or how come it needs to be smaller?
Because that's too many words for me.
And then we're gonna be serving lunch,
Way too
here
many.
in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, you definitely can.
Yeah, we only give them like 5 or 6 minutes.
Are these the same?
No. I mean, I'm gonna go try it all.
This one is like the app we were using, and there's Spanish on it. Yeah.
I've got a neighbor, it's a very tricky situation. She's Mennonite,
Oh.
so like they're opening a whole new world.
Oh,
She's not
yeah.
verbal, she's partially blind, so she's going to public school. She started out at ISD out of Jacksonville. But I'm thinking, this would be good for her too.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.
Oh, we gotta sign that to stand up. Sorry I kept getting
Oh, no problem. I understand.
2 call-offs in one day.
Oh, geez.
Who does that?